Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Tuesday, January 28th. This is the second of two public forums the board is holding now that we are reviewing and considering the proposed 2025-26 education budget that has been put forward to us by Dr. Freeman and the Guilford Public Schools Administration. This is an opportunity for the public to come and make comment now that they also have available to them the proposed budget. For those who are interested and have not yet seen it, the budget is available on the Guilford Public Schools website. So again, this is the second of two public forums. We, the board, started our process in the fall. In October, we held a public forum on the budget. At that point, we were engaging the public in what they would like us to consider, because of course at that point we did not have numbers, we did not have a proposed budget, but it was a time for the public to come forward and ask us to consider various items. We now are in this, again, 2 nights of public forum. We will be voting on the budget next Monday in a special Board of Ed meeting, and have scheduled for tomorrow night, Wednesday, January 29th at 6 p.m., a meeting in this room, the Guilford High School Library, in case we feel at the end of this evening that we need more time to talk and deliberate in order to be fully prepared to vote next Monday. So tonight, we want to invite anyone in the public who is interested in addressing the board to come up to the podium. We ask that you give your name and address. The one exception to that is if you are a student, please give your name. You do not need to give your address. We are asking minors not to give their address. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. We are trying to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak, but also that everyone has kind of an equal chance to speak. That was the same time limit we asked for last night. Lastly, for those who might be viewing via our TV or video streaming, if you are unable to come to either of these public forums, we certainly are also accepting comments via email. We all have emails listed on the Board of Ed website. We have already received a number of comments from people throughout the month on the budget, and certainly any of you are welcome to do that as well. So tonight is about hearing from you. We will not be commenting and engaging back and forth. This is really, we want to make sure you have your full 3 minutes to say what you'd like to say. And so I'm now just going to invite anyone who would like to come up and speak to the board. I am going to ask quickly, is there a pad of paper? Yeah. There is, okay. There is a pad of paper you'll find at the podium, either right before or after your remarks. If you would write your name and address there as well, because Terry, who does a wonderful job of taking our minutes, is helped by having a written version of that.
Dr. Belstracy, it seemed to work better last night if you made your comments and then recorded your information after you've spoken while the next speaker is at the podium. So we're going to move it to just behind the podium.
Oh,
there's a race.
There's a race to who's going to thank you both to do that. Wonderful. So please, if you have a comment you'd like to make to the board, please come to the podium. We're ready to listen.
Hello, everybody. Rob Federici, 230 Village Pond Road. I think my comment was more applicable for future budgets, not necessarily this one, but I just wanted to once again share with the board my encouragement to investigate the viability of expanding the preschool program to the other 3 elementary schools. It's an incredibly valuable resource for parents with young children. I think we all agree that early education is extremely important for all kids. In addition to making preschool access in the preschool program more accessible in Guilford, it also adds stability for kids who would then be able to continue on from preschool into their elementary school because they'd be in the same district. Right now, there's some kids who maybe go to Guilford Lakes and then they have to change schools after this couple of years. It's also a need that's been exacerbated in recent months when North Guilford Nursery School closed. So now North Guilford has even fewer options than they had before. So I just wanted to share that. I think that'd be a great thing for the town to look into. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
And ban all cell phones in school.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Put a name and address here.
Name and
Yes,
address there.
please.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
And your Swiss bank account.
Social security.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Allison Wilkerson Mathis, and I live at 216 Bluff View Drive in North Guilford. I'm grateful to live and work in a town that welcomes the input of community members to make hard and important decisions to fund our public schools. As an educator and a parent, I have had the opportunity to experience public school settings in 7 states and an even greater number of schools. Our story of moving to Guilford is not unlike many transplant families within the town. We needed to move here for work. We were told Guilford is the town to move to, and so we did. And it has proven to be true. As I reviewed the budget, I was perplexed as to why there would be 2 teaching positions removed from primary grade classrooms. I've taught in schools with large class sizes. Those class sizes started with small numbers, but year after year, the number would creep up a little higher as if to say, what is one more? During my, albeit limited time in Guilford, I am seeing this happen, and it is concerning. I understand that current meta-analysis of academic outcome tied solely to class size is inconclusive. But what I can say from anecdotally and from my professional experience is that staff discussions about meeting student needs in primary grades in schools with large class sizes is that 1, many students who are doing okay are largely ignored, and 2, the language surrounding what the individual student needs are in an academic area are often limited to something like, this student isn't keeping up, let's put them in a small group. While in Guilford, these same conversations are so finite that we may discuss, for example, this student can segment and blend CVC words, but when they write the words, they are only writing the first and last letter in the word. Then we discuss plans to meet the very next step in their support, and this continues in a similar manner such that the individual needs of students are actually being met. I additionally want to touch on one other concern with large class sizes: self-esteem. When class sizes are low, teachers are able to support young minds, literally the developing brains of young humans, in a way that benefits their self-esteem. The brain research on this topic is new and therefore still limited, but what is currently found in the MRIs within these studies is that there is an increase of gray matter in people with higher levels of self-esteem. Additionally, current meta-analysis of self-esteem across human lifespan suggests that the average levels of self-esteem decrease in the transition from early to middle childhood, i.e. from about age 4 to 8 years, which are the primary grades, as a result of the effects of social cognitive advances, which is tied to their self-perception of academic abilities and peer relationships. It is my request that as students are learning to blow their noses, tie their shoes, and learn how to read, that they are supported with small class sizes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Marshall Mathis, 216 Bluffview Drive also. I'm here to I'm not going to say that I'm an expert in meta-analysis or teaching. My expertise is more like dad jokes. But I will tell you, as a parent who has had children attend schools all across the country, class sizes do matter. And eliminating a primary grade teacher can have an impact. I hated my first grade experience. Rest in peace, Mrs. Busenbark, don't haunt me. But I'm here to say that I've seen the impact of especially when you have a teacher that lives in your community and can reach each student in the classroom. I've witnessed Allison as a rock star in the community when the children see her. But that doesn't happen with large class sizes. And it definitely doesn't happen when you reduce teachers. And we've seen the trend of the nation where you're cutting funding and reducing teacher size, and then the education goes down. And we've witnessed that as we've moved across the country. For my work, my family has sacrificed for me. I don't have a first grader. I do have 3 children in Guilford schools, and they are thriving. And it is different than what we've experienced in other states. So I would just ask you to consider not to reduce the teacher size, but find other ways to cut the budget. And I know there's a lot of pressure for that, and we understand that. Thank you for your time.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
you.
My name is Teresa Matteo, 11 Hampton Court in Guilford. I wanted to voice my support for an additional Italian teacher at Guilford High School. My son, who is a freshman, struggled in Spanish at Adams, so was hoping for a fresh start in Italian, but instead was put on a waiting list. He was offered Latin or Arabic, but had no interest in those. Sadly, he skipped a language this year, and I'm being told that he's not guaranteed Italian next year either. It's unfortunate that we had to stop teaching Spanish at the elementary school level, but we should do whatever we can to honor our students' wishes in terms of what language they'd like to learn in high school. Decisions like these should be data-driven, though, and for the majority of the students' benefits, which is why I've asked for some data points to support my request. I'd like to know how many students are enrolled in each language class, how many full-time teachers we have for each language, and the number of students on a waiting list by language. Simple. Let's have the data speak for itself, or in essence, have the students speak for themselves. I've heard it mentioned that it's difficult to find world language teachers. That's not an excuse not to try. As we teach our children, we should accept the challenges and try to overcome them. I personally know a couple of qualified candidates willing to apply. And this doesn't have to be an additional budget line item. It's a matter of looking at the demand across languages and having enough teachers for the top requested languages. For example, that could be replacing a Spanish teacher for an Italian teacher. I really can't be specific without seeing the numbers. All I do know is that I was told there is a lengthy waiting list for Italian. I'd also like to note that in my opinion, upperclassmen should get their first choice of languages. I'm not sure of the logic there and would like to understand that more. In summary, I look forward to seeing the data, and if there is a demand for another Italian teacher in place of another language teacher, I stand by my request. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lynn Kwok from 100 Little Meadow. Good evening, members of board, educators, and parents. I'm here to address the allocation of funds and resources for extended lunchtime. I understood that this is for the, for our 2025 and 26 budget. But if this is too late to address this issue, I hope we can consider this for the following year. So currently, students only have 20 to 25 minutes for lunchtime. This one is including walking to the cafeteria, standing in line, unpacking their lunches, and sometimes even using the bathroom. By the time they sit down and eat, there is hardly any time to eat their meal, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And last year, my son was kindergarten. And the little hands, it's hard to even open their lunchbox. And they just come back, Mommy, I don't have enough time to eat my lunch. I spoke to my neighbor next door, right and left. They say same thing. In CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends that students should have at least 20 minutes of uninterrupted time to eat so they can get enough food. However, when they are rushed, the healthy parts of their meals often go uneaten and end up in the trash, such as apples and carrots, no time to even chew. And we know that proper nutrition directly impacts both their academic performance and emotional well-being. Lunchtime also offers an opportunity for students to foster friendship. When my son goes to school in the morning, I tell him, don't talk to anyone, just focus on your eating. You only have 5 to 10 minutes. So, when the lunch is rushed, kids return to school without being fully recharged. I understand there are logistic challenges such as shared cafeteria spaces and staffing shortages. But I'd like to suggest allocating resources to extend lunchtime, hiring additional cafeteria staff. I briefly saw there was a $4,000 for lunchtime supervisors, but they can be increased, or we can invest in innovative meal system, or as I said, hiring additional staff. There are also ideas we can explore that may not require extra funding, such as allowing students to eat in their classrooms. This would save time walking to the cafeteria and allow them to start eating right away in more relaxed environment.
Thank you.
Is
I'm
that-
going to ask you to wrap it up as we
Okay,
get to
thank
the
you.
3
That's why I'm
minutes. Thank
kind of
you.
rushing. So I'm from South Korea, and we have 40 to 45 minutes just in one place and finish eating and relax. In France, it's 90 minutes. Thinking about 10 minutes is just, not.
Thank you.
So again, maybe I can come back in fall. You say September and October. Maybe I can.
That would be terrific. Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the board?
This mic's low here. Hello, my name's Lou Monaco. I teach here at Guilford High School. In regards to the budget, I feel I almost need to recuse myself, obviously being connected to it, but I just wanted to say one quick thing.
Sure.
I, throughout my life, have for the most part stayed on the sidelines when it comes to political debate, especially being a teacher of civics here in the building, and I believe it's truly important to allow all viewpoints to be heard, but within reason. I heard earlier today a recording of a meeting that you had yesterday, and like most meetings, you invited people to carry out their civic duty and share their perspective. But when I heard the comments of an individual who attended yesterday's meeting with a condescending attitude towards the native people of Guilford, its original residents, the people of the Quinnipiac tribe, referring to them as godless savages, as well as other hateful comments in this public forum, I felt that I needed to say something. And I think almost all of Guilford stands with me when we say, enough is enough. This is not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a common sense thing. Our town, a town that I've grown up in and now dedicated my life to educating its children, is better than this. This town, for my lifetime, has stood as a place of acceptance, as a place rooted in history, yet always willing to change with the times. Even with its heart residing in 1639, this is a town that has weathered the storms of hate and through it all has chosen love and compassion, regardless of the faith of its residents. It is a town that, whether we are descendants of some of the earliest settlers or people who have come from all corners of the earth to reside here, we can proudly say that we are Guilford. We are better than these few backhanded comments. We, like any community, have differences, but we should address those differences in a civil manner and not try to strive for some statement that can be a soundbite. I think that we should rather focus on what we can all agree on, and that is that our town is better than this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We did.
Joe Petrowski, Valley Shores Drive. I was here last night, and because of time, I had one more comment I'd like to make. But before I make that, I'd like to thank the previous speaker. Thank you. On your bonding request for improvements to the buildings, I'm glad there's a proactive approach. But I have one question. There's a line item there for stream cleaning at Adams. Is that the drainage ditch behind the building?
That is there's a water issue, which is creating a stream that is running from the school south
South side of the school.
south side of the school, behind and between houses to the south of the school, that we are addressing.
It's to mitigate the
Okay,
water
now-
in the properties that
now-
are adjacent to the school.
I know a little something about what happened there. Does anybody remember if that's the one that was ever cleaned?
I'm not sure.
We have cleaned it out
You're-
periodically.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that the one that was causing the drainage problem that was creating the flooding in the basement classrooms?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It was originally cleaned out in 2002, that I'm aware of. Question I
I
have
don't
for you
remember
is, should that
the
be
time.
considered a maintenance issue and not go to bonding? I mean, it may not be your call, but
We've run
I
it.
don't know how frequent this is done.
Yeah, I want to be careful about getting into conversation,
Right,
but
yeah.
it has
Yeah,
been.
right, okay, but I'm
yeah,
just saying.
It's a
That's
good
just one
question.
issue
No, it's a good
brought up, and I
question.
want to make sure, you know.
It's a really good question. We have looked into it. We've spoken with bond
Fine.
counsel about it, and we can
Fine.
certainly revisit. the
I
basement.
apologize, I didn't, when you said had it been cleaned, I didn't understand what your question was, yeah. Okay, so we can, but we
Yeah,
can
that's, I'm
certainly.
just saying, that's,
We can clarify the
Absolutely.
placement of it.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
you.
My name is Alyssa Stevens, 135 Millstone Drive. So good evening. I recognize that putting together the budget for this year has been especially challenging due to rising medical insurance costs and salary increases, both of which are contractual obligations we cannot cut. Medical insurance cost increases are being felt across the board, driven by several factors including rising medical expenses, inflation, and provider shortages. Additionally, I recently came across an article in Reuters highlighting another factor contributing to these increases: growing market concentration among fewer insurance companies. According to a survey by Mercer, U.S. employers expect health insurance costs to rise by an average of 5.8% in 2025, largely due to increased medical service costs and higher usage. This marks the third consecutive year of more than 5% cost increases, a significant jump from the 3% average increase during the previous decade. Given these pressures, I understand that the proposed budget leaves little room for cuts without negatively impacting our students and teachers. If there are concerns that the increase is too high or that significant cuts need to be made, I urge those individuals to dive deep into all of the factors driving these rising costs, not only for our district, but across the entire country. Voting against the budget will not send a message, as some may intend. Instead, it means we will still be faced with the increased medical costs and salary obligations, but we'll need to pull funds from essential programs and services to balance the budget. This will directly affect the quality of education for our children, both in the short and long term. As we all know, education is widely considered one of the most valuable assets a person can have. It opens doors to career opportunities, personal growth, and improved quality of life. Cutting into educational programs will ultimately undermine the opportunities available to our students. As the process moves forward, I strongly urge the board to be thoughtful when considering reductions. For example, last year, the Summer Pathways program was considered for reduction. This program has received many positive reviews and is a valuable resource for students, but if it is on the list for reductions again this year, I hope the decision is made prior to fully enrolling kids in the program. Cutting the program later in the process can cause panic for families who will then need to find alternative options for their children for nearly a month of summer programming. I know none of the decisions are easy, but I hope that as we continue through this process, we all keep the long-term impacts on our children in mind. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
My name is Michael Lawton. I'm a junior here at Guilford, captain of the lacrosse team and co-class president of the junior class. And today I'm talking on behalf of the fitness center. First, I'd like to preface thanking you for capital improvement funds in the budget that's being marked for the fitness center. And I'm not going to speak too much on, I guess, the physical benefits, of weight room, but more the mental aspect. It's been my experience the past few years that administrators have really promoted mental health awareness. I feel like there's probably a new social worker every year, and we can see it like with mental health days. And I think that it's really great, the mental health awareness, but I think it's almost a little naive that we've neglected the fitness center. I was just talking to Coach White, who was a student here in the 90s, and he said that some of the equipment there has been there since he was a student, which is, I mean, it's kind of crazy. And I think, you know, weightlifting, it has a huge impact on mental health, and physical fitness really, I guess, promotes mental health. I mean, there's a bunch of science to back that up. Can't really speak to that, but I can speak from personal experience. I play goalie in lacrosse, and that's kind of one of those positions where you have really high highs, but you can also have really low lows. And I think one of the things that's helped me to sort of combat that has been the time I've spent in the weight room, and just building my confidence in the weight room has allowed me to build my confidence on the field and also build my confidence outside of the weight room, off the field. Helping with, you know, building connections with my teammates, and since I was a freshman, really, going to the team lifts, you know, connecting with upperclassmen, and now being captain, able to sort of share that same experience with the new kids coming in has been kind of special to see it from the other perspective. So I kind of want to just urge you guys to take that into account as, you know, you look at all the programs you're setting up for mental health awareness, to kind of take into account the capabilities and the effect that maybe, you know, fixing the weight room, renovating the weight room would have on mental health, rather than just, you know, the physical fitness aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lucio Nastri. I am a junior at Guilford, and I am also a co-class president. I'm also speaking on behalf of the weight room, more of the physical and supervising part. When we go to the weight room, it's maybe 3 times a week. Kids have work after school, and some kids even have like tutors and stuff. It's not every day, but neither is left. And I think hiring a few supervisors or whatever to watch us as we lift, because we're not allowed in there without a coach, other adult. I don't know what the certifications are, but I think we should have someone in there. I know maybe our trainer might become like a strength and conditioning coach, but I think it should be open to everyone after school, because a lot of the places in Guilford, place right up here is $450 for 3 months. And I know my family can't afford that. A lot of other families can't afford that. And I come to lift every day. It's also like, it affects my mental health. It makes me a better person. I play football and lacrosse, and it builds bonds, and it helps you get ready for your sport. I know we had multiple kids in the incoming freshman class who are, I'm not going to disrespect their height or anything, but they're little, and you need to have like strength and size to come into this sport. But they have the heart to come and work out, but they can't really get there after school because of they don't have cars. Some of them bike, but if we had it right after school, some parents would get out of work by the time it would be over, and I just think it would be better for us if we had more supervisors in the gym. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight? I'm not seeing anyone get up. I'm going to pause a second in case there's someone thinking about it, but no. Okay. I want to thank all of you who did come tonight and provide us with some input. It's very helpful to hear from the community and understand what their priorities are. I would like to take a little bit of a privilege here as the chair, and also thank Mr. Monaco for his comments. It's an important thing to say out loud, and one of the things I would like to make sure that we do as a Board of Ed is be a place where the discourse is always civil and respectful of all people. So I really appreciate those comments, Mr. Monaco, and thank you for making them tonight. What we're going to do now, and this is a public meeting, and those of you who are here are welcome to stay, is to take the opportunity among ourselves as part of this meeting to start thinking about the budget. We have, each of us, gone through our budget books. We have heard from you tonight, again, heard from community members last night, and also heard from folks in our community via email. And we are going to take the opportunity to start thinking about what we have before us, possible reductions we may want to consider, possible additions we may want to consider. Again, we will not be voting tonight. The vote will happen next Monday. But we really do like to take the opportunity to have as much discussion time as possible. I will start with a couple of things. Again, we have a budget in front of us. Currently, the proposed budget is at a 6.53% increase. Very thoughtfully, incredibly thoughtfully prepared by our staff, our district leadership team, our administration, and Dr. Freeman. But we do want to spend some time tonight again thinking about ways that we might be able to reduce this a little bit. Individually, we've done some thinking about it. I know the administration has done some thinking about this as well. We have asked Dr. Freeman, because we have really determined that as we think about possibly reducing this increase, we want to hear from him and from the district leadership team, who really are the most expert in where those costs might be able to, or any reductions might be able to come from. I'm going to turn it to you, Dr. Freeman, for a second. Do you have anything you want to say as we start to deliberate about?
So I think that we recognize that this budget is coming in at a high water mark. When I presented, I shared that this is the highest % increase that I have ever brought forward in any budget. I also noted that it is a very conservative budget. There are not a lot of new investments. There are not a lot of new positions that are being asked for. We are not expanding programming with this budget. There's one possible area of expansion, and that is moving into the delivery of math intervention at the earliest grades. We have always provided literacy intervention. We have held off on staffing math intervention. We have relied on the classroom teachers to provide those interventions. This budget does provide a 0.5 math interventionist at each of the 2 elementary schools, each of the 4 elementary schools. We're envisioning 2 full-time positions that each shares responsibility for 2 of our elementary schools. I will note that even that investment comes in at the very lowest levels of the salary scale. That is not to suggest that we think we are going to go out and find 2 brand new teachers who would be skilled interventionists. It is a suggestion that we will find 2 veteran Guilford teachers who are skilled interventionists, and that we would then backfill those positions, hopefully, with teachers who come in lower on the salary scale. Even that is a little bit challenged in this teaching environment, but that is the way that this budget has been built. This budget suggests a net increase in teaching staff of 1.6 FTEs. also the lowest number that I have, in contrast to the highest budget increase, the lowest number of new instructional positions that we have asked for. This budget is built on no increases in administration or custodial or clerical or para or safety and security positions, with one exception. We've moved from 1 to 3 SROs, school resource officers in the district. All of that being said, the document that we've shared with you to begin these deliberations, to assist you as you begin these deliberations, notes areas where we believe we can look at reductions. It doesn't specifically call out areas where we think we can look at additions in this budget. I will note that some of the community comment that we've heard and some of the emails that we've received suggest areas that we might want to think about further investing, and we're prepared to speak to some of those. Some of those we believe that we've got creative suggestions, and some of those we think that maybe we need to hold, and a number of our commenters even said we may need to hold off for future years. We're ready to respond to questions, to suggestions. We're ready to pass out hard copies of the document that we've prepared. And if we start there, I also think that, as we have in past years, we've identified possible areas of reduction that are furthest removed from the classrooms. And as this board has always done, I suggest that we start with some of those areas, one of which we discussed earlier tonight in another meeting with the other two boards in the town. I think that it's incumbent upon us to start in those areas, compare those to some of the targets that we've given you on that tool, and then, and only then, begin conversation about whether we talk about some of those areas that fall closer to the school buildings and, in fact, closer to the classrooms.
Absolutely. And so just to put that discussion in context, the Board of Ed did hold a meeting prior to this meeting, public meeting, posted with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and invited our healthcare medical insurance consultant, Mr. Joe Spurgeon, to join us, who walked us through a discussion about the reason. Sorry, I'm having trouble here. The reason we're looking at such a significant increase in the projection for the medical benefit line next year. At the moment, for the Board of Ed, we're looking at an increase of 1.8 million, which is really a significant increase. It was a great opportunity for all three boards to hear directly at the same time. Of course, the medical benefits, the medical insurance is impacting the town as well as the Board of Ed. In that joint self-insured group, the Board of Ed is responsible for 78%. We have a far greater number of employees that we're covering. But again, a great opportunity. We have a medical fund attached to the whole process of funding insurance for our staff and our employees. And the discussion did come up among the boards tonight of potentially using some of the money in that funds to try to mitigate the cost, essentially the increase of the budget this year. It is indeed one of the uses of that fund when we have a year in which we have such a large increase and want to mitigate the cost to the taxpayer. So that is certainly something for the Board of Ed to consider. This, in order to take money out of the medical fund balance in this manner to mitigate by both the town and the Board of Ed, does require all three boards, the Board of Education, the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance, to agree. So as we enter the process and make this consideration, all three boards are aware that we are thinking about this approach. And so that is going to be something we may even want to start with tonight as a possible discussion.
Dr. Balistraci, so to draw everyone's attention to that, the conversation tonight and the suggestion tonight, now we would need approval of the other two boards.
That's right.
But if we were to go at using the medical surplus fund to mitigate some of this medical increase in the formula that we discussed, that would be a reduction of $587,000 to the Board of Education.
585, no?
585.
585, thank you.
585.
So Linda, the number I just asked you to calculate was
78% of 750.
Yep, would you
Yep.
change it by $2,000? It won't make much of a difference.
No.
It's important for this board to remember that while that would be a reduction in this year, we will have to invest next year to make up that lost ground, and then the year after, and again, we discussed all of this in some detail in the earlier meeting. It's just important to note that it's not windfall. It's not an easy decision to make, although I think it's an important one to discuss, and it does seem that it's a direction that the other two boards are willing to look towards.
That's
So I
exactly
think
right.
that we want to start there.
It's really a loan to ourselves.
It is.
It's a loan.
It is a loan to ourselves, and we will have to make good on that. If we don't, it becomes budgeting on your credit card,
Liability.
and it's never a good way to budget. But I appreciate the thoughtful approach that was discussed in the previous meeting. Additionally, I'd like to draw the board's attention to the section on benefits and the medical OPEB benefits. Remember, OPEB are other post-employment benefits. This is a fund that with the town, we agreed to begin funding in past years. We worked with the actuaries and we created a schedule. We've talked with the town about adjusting that schedule in light of this year's increases and skipping a year of investment into the OPEB fund. Now again, there's a little bit of a soft number, and we've showed you what a full reduction, skipping one full payment and just reducing to a half payment. We would have to do this in collaboration with the town. The town has not yet fully decided to move in this direction, but again, I think that it would be responsible to look at the full reduction, skip an investment completely this year. We will adjust the actuarial tables to reflect that. We will again have to make that up to some degree next year, but with an adjusted table, we won't have to make up the whole lot, right? We'll build back. And so that would be a further reduction of $330,000. And then additionally, I want to draw your attention to the pension reduction. We've simply worked with the accountants and we've looked at our projected pension, and we believe that we can reduce the budgeted pension contribution by $40,000. So those three lines together would bring us to a reduction of $955,000. I believe just by making those three broad changes, we will bring the 6.5% increase budget down to approximately a 5.2% increase.
5.18.
5.18. And that is before we begin conversation in some of these other areas that land much closer to the students and to the classrooms. So I just want to, and again, 5.8 is a significant.
18?
So 5.18, thank you.
Okay.
5.18 is very different than 5.8. 5.18 is still a significant percent increase, and it leaves me thinking that the Board of Finance will still have interest in talking about further reductions. So I do just want to, but man, in one meeting, we've never gone down by almost 2 full percent in a way that we're talking about being able to do that this way. I want to make those suggestions, and I absolutely want to call out and appreciate the collaboration and the thoughtful way that the town is approaching this as well. Both of these adjustments, if we make them in this nature, will likewise help to reduce the town budget, and again, in a smaller degree. Dr. Balistraci, to your point, we're the biggest employer in town. It'll have less of an impact on the town's budget, but it'll have similar impact on bringing down the town request as well. And again, I'm happy to talk about items that have been discussed over the last 2 nights, plans for a number of those topics that have come up, but I just wanted to start by putting those relatively large numbers out there
Yes.
for early consideration before we start looking at things like classroom supplies in $1,000 increments that are
Yes.
also on your sheet.
And you mentioned that the OPEB fund we started 4 or 5 years ago, is essentially an endowment that we've tried to create. It does not get used. Money just goes in, so in the long run, we can draw, let's say, 5% on it. So if we don't put money into it this year, nobody gets harmed other than we add a year of contributions that we haven't put in.
Correct.
But it's sitting there.
That is correct.
And it's totally invested, getting somewhere between 6 and 8% a year.
No, it's important to note that this is responsible spending previous years for these circumstances.
No, that's right.
Yes,
This is-
exactly right.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
This is, it is.
It's a really thoughtful approach.
Exists for that,
Yeah.
for that way, and again, to mitigate, for the
rainy days.
community, that's right, to mitigate.
It's raining all over this budget.
To mitigate the tax increase to the community that supports the school system every year.
I was wondering if we can make a small tangent when we're talking about cuts, but I want to talk about one of the things that we've heard most from over the last 2 nights, and that's Italian.
Yes.
And I was wondering if we could speak to that, because we've heard a lot of really good, compelling, reasons why we should expand or keep it as it is or reduce.
So the draft budget, as we brought it to you, did not have space for an Italian position in the budget. We have continued, however, to work with Ms. Chaff and to look at this budget, and we do believe that we can include a half-time Italian position in the budget, which was always the intention. We don't need another full-time position to meet the demand that we're seeing. It would be a half-time position. Currently, there are 2 teachers in the high school who are teaching world language and are teaching beyond their contract limits. They're teaching 6 sections, not 5 sections of world language. And we often end up doing that because of the difficulty of finding new positions. So these 2 individuals are teaching 120% of their contract. They're being compensated at 120% of their contract. We believe that we can use the dollars that are there for those extra 40%, bundle those together, and be able to post for a .5 Italian position. We are, to some of the comments that were made earlier, counting on the fact that if we offer more Italian seats, we would fill those with students who wouldn't be going into those overflow sections that are being offered currently. And historically, we've offered those overflow sections in both French and Spanish. So the high school will have a lot of scheduling work to do, but we believe that we can post for that position without adding new dollars or new FTEs to the budget. The dollars exist in the salary line. They're currently, we'll have to adjust the staffing plan, right? It would be an additional half-time staffing position, but the dollars would still be
Would be the
salary
same.
dollars that we could move.
Thank you. I thought that was
would be
important because,
terrific.
again, I thought it would be a quick solve, or not an easy solve, but a quick, way to explain it. So
It's
thank you.
easy to solve at the budget table. It'll be
Yeah.
work for the high school who will have to post, find that position, fill that position, and then build those schedules. But yes, we believe that it's a wash at the budget table.
And historically, I know we were talking about this the other night, our language department offers various languages, and several of them are 2-year offerings. We have Latin and we have Arabic. And when students want to pursue a 3rd year, very often what's offered to them is an independent study, and I have a child in my home who has done that with Arabic for the last 2 years, to do 4 years of Arabic. So it's not the only, I just wanted to be very clear, that wasn't that Italian was the only language that we were, at the time we introduced it, limiting it to 2. There was precedent to say, we offer these other 2 languages for 2 years, and this is what happens. We want to see these classes succeed and demand grow, and we're kind of going through those growing pains here, but it's wonderful to hear that there might be this relief valve and these overextended teacher in terms of their hours that we can kind of allot to Italian.
This board will remember that the original plan for this position was to begin offering a language, and in fact, we were targeting Mandarin or possibly
Right.
Hindi.
Right.
And we realized at the time that the best approach for us would be to post for a world language teacher, hire the best, most exciting teacher, and then allow the language to follow. And we are as surprised as anybody with the success and the popularity of the program and the demand for the additional 2 years. And we're excited to find a way to be able to offer that and make it fit within a really challenging budget year.
And to your point, historically, it's been very challenging to hire foreign language teachers. And so that approach was simply to put out in the atmosphere, find the best teacher and not really worry about the language. And so it's just to the argument that we'll just hire them. It's not that simple, unfortunately.
We didn't intentionally decide that Italian was going to be the
Right.
most popular language program in Guilford. Right? Again, the language was a surprise because we found the right person.
Believe me, as a person with the last name Balistraci, I believe I was one of the people who said, Italian, really? So it's
Yeah.
great. It's
But
wonderful.
the good news is we hired a spectacular teacher.
No, that's right.
That is
That
going
makes a
out there. We got a good language and we got a great, the reviews of the teacher. Part of the fact that we got so much demand is that the teacher, just by being there, is generated interest, which is the best thing that can happen.
Yes. So again, and happy to answer any other questions about other topics that
Thank you
came
for
up.
covering
Yes,
that,
yep.
Staying on the topic of Italian for a moment, is the hope that with the additional half an FTE, Italian 3 or an AP, like a third year will be offered and subsequently a fourth year? Or is it just simply to expand
good question.
Italian to the incoming and existing students for years 1 and 2?
The goal is to try to answer the demand for 3 and 4. And so it won't necessarily open up more seats for 1, but we want to be able to keep these students who are so passionate about it moving forward if possible. And so that's the goal. Some of that may have to do with the hire, right? And again, so all of these things being fluid, but we want to try to respond to what we have been hearing in the emails and in public comments, and that we provide opportunities for 3 and 4. That's the goal.
Thank
At
you.
least 3, right, to meet that college pressure.
Yep.
So at least
Right,
3,
that
possibly
expectation.
3 and 4 moving forward in the future.
Great.
And again, those numbers are always fluid. And so for anybody who is suggesting that it's going to keep being popular and it's going to keep growing, we can certainly add an additional half in the future if that demand continues to be there.
Thank you.
No, I was just going to say, I'm glad that you didn't set this up so that we had to vote on this specifically, because I'm very biased. I spent a semester in Siena, Italy. Still slightly conversational in Italian, so I'm probably not
Very
the only one who's
impressive. I
biased.
just-
You have to go to the rest of the meeting in Italian.
Are you interested in the part-time?
I was just gonna say, Arnold, how fluent are you still?
I do, hopefully we could pivot.
Yeah.
Safety, sanitation, upkeep of buildings.
Yes.
Right? We're seeing a 26% increase in that. We continuously, year after year, due to the age of some of our buildings and the upkeep necessary, we see that line trend over. As we look at the bond, it's one of our lowest bond years that we've had, that I could remember. Are there any bonding potential, are there any bonds that we could make to mitigate some of these expenses?
I don't think so. So these tend to be contracts that we engage in, so the septic contracts, right? And so the cost of those contracts have been increasing. We look really carefully to what is bonded, what we contract. Yeah, I'm going to defer to Linda. She's getting her backup material.
No, I only ask because, we see this line jump, month over month because of big projects that come up. Obviously, a lot of them are, unknowns.
Like the stream.
Like the stream.
Yeah.
And so, again, the hope was that there might be things in there that we could help mitigate. Whether it's HVAC, whether it's electrical, whether it's, streams, piping.
We do seem to be on the cusp of hiring a new HVAC employee.
Wonderful.
Yes, so, right, and so.
Can he teach Italian?
So we've made some of those moves, right? So shifting from hopefully not putting dollars out to contractors, but being able to invest in another full-time employee. The weight room, we worked really hard to find the opportunity to be able to bond the weight room equipment investment rather than having to put that into an equipment purchase, a capital purchase in the operating budget. Linda, I'll defer to you. Those are increased costs and contracts that we've been carrying and we've been falling behind every year. As you scan down the page, is there an opportunity to bond?
No, because it's things like the fire alarm inspection, safety system maintenance, cleaning of the kitchen hoods.
Yeah.
trash removal, pest control, playground repairs. It's a list of
Annual responsibilities.
But when we, so
Required-
remind me, when we had to redo the flooring at the Baldwin Gymnasium, did that come out of this budget?
No.
That would have been site improvement.
That would have been site
That would have been
improvements.
site improvements.
But are there things like asbestos? I mean, are some of,
So I just bring that up because, are there things from site improvements that we could potentially take out in bond as opposed to, and hoping to alleviate the overall budget and put them into bond items?
and so that that's a bit of the back and the forth that we have. So in the way that I view it, and right, the bonding has a certain lifespan and a certain dollar amount. You cannot bond something unless it reaches a certain dollar amount and unless it's going to have a 20-year lifespan to it. And so the way in which we view, right, so the way in which we view site improvements is that our hope, our goal, and we've never reached the goal, at least not while I've been here. The goal is that we carry 1% of the overall budget in site improvements, and those tend to be allowance lines. And those really do go to immediate need and sort of continual upkeep. It's dollars to replace ceiling panels that get wet and carpet that gets sticky and windows that, like in an individual window that may become drafty. The bonds are when we have bigger full items like doing the entire envelope around Lakes Elementary School this year, where we're going to replace all of the exterior windows and doors, enhancing both security and heating and cooling efficiency of that building. And so the two really work hand in hand. Mm-hmm. If we were to be able to bring the site improvement up to the 1% and spend it really well, it would push off the big bonding projects further. And then when the bonding projects are done thoughtfully and well, which is why we're doing another outside study this year, looks like we're going to be working with Fryer and Associates. They're going to be doing a full study of all of the facilities. A thoughtful bonding project, or in fact even a building project, right? There's that tipping point where you're investing in the buildings preventatively until the point that they're no longer worth investing in small dollars, so you do a big project, and then even then, buildings ultimately, and we're sitting in the best example, a building eventually gets to the point that it's not worth putting small or large dollars into, and you really have to consider replacing that building, which is what we did here at the high school to such positive effect. Mm-hmm. So the answer is really, it's an all of the above approach, and we think we keep hitting the sweet spot, but we need to keep getting pushed on whether or not we can move something one way or the other this year or next year. We have reductions in site improvement listed on this list for you tonight.
I know.
With the three that we've already talked about, when those come up, I will advise us not to look at those tonight.
No, we see that line every month. Yeah.
And this, in this budget where it sits now, doesn't get to the 1%. So I wouldn't suggest going to that unless there is an eventuality or a circumstance that drives this board back to make further cuts, whether that happens at a town meeting or whether the Board of Finance directs further reductions. Then that's an item that I would encourage us to look at later, but I would discourage us from making any further reductions there as our own body before moving a budget forward for deliberation with the Board of Finance and then at town meeting and ultimately at referendum.
I had
That's a long answer, I apologize.
No, it's an important conversation.
Could have said yeah.
It was, and again, it was one of those questions, the context helps, because I think we all needed to learn about, just how we thoughtfully put our, how we thoughtfully put bonds up for our town to vote on it. So, thank you.
I had a question about Guilford Transition Academy rent. And I see it on your list as well. So $40,000 in the current budget year that we're spending for that rent. $75,000 in the proposed budget. I assume the 75 is if we were looking externally. If we decided we should stay put, would that go back to 40? Would it go to 43? Would it, I don't know what the rent will be next year in that space.
The reduction that we show on the list here would take away our ability to continue shopping around for a larger place. And we've gone back and forth on this.
No, I know,
Just
we
last
have.
year,
Right.
we had money in the budget that would allow us to look for a bigger location.
And we
We cut
took
it out
it out.
last year after the budget failed. The money is back in this budget to allow us to shop around for a bigger location, but we're suggesting if necessary, it can be removed, which would then lock us into our current location.
Okay.
I know we put on here to do a $35,000 reduction. My concern is I'm not sure what the rent would be on extending for
Right.
another year.
That's what I was asking.
So
It might be 45 and not
Yeah,
40,
I mean,
or it might
I
be,
would say maybe do, you could do 30.
Yeah.
25 to 30.
Because of the back and forth nature of this, we are now working with year-to-year agreements. And
Sure.
so, right, we're outside of a multi-year lease because we're not sure how long we want to stay. And every year, the budget cycle is changing our opinion of whether we're going to stay one more year or keep looking.
okay. Okay.
Weight room staffing. What's the cost of adequate part-time help to give enough hours during the week for what we've heard in these meetings? And do we have staff on either overtime or stipends that could take it, rather than trying to hire a person for, say, 6 hours or 10 hours a week?
Right now, we are in the midst of polling other towns around the state to find out if anybody staffs a weight room in the way that we've heard
Yes.
described.
Yeah.
And if so, with whom do they staff it and what is the expense associated with that? So I'm not sure what the cost would be, what the schedule would look like, or what the hour demand would be for some of the suggestions. We need time to look into that. Currently, the weight room is open to varsity coaches who come in with their teams on or off season, which is essentially a volunteer system. So when we heard a public speaker come out and say that there were 3 or 4 teams that were all in the weight room on the evening that he spoke, those are Guilford coaches who are going in there with their teams on or off season, and they're doing that for the stipend that they draw as a coach. We do have PE teachers who we could consider offering additional time or stipended money to work beyond their contract. But again, we're finding very few districts that are offering that. There are very few models out there that we are prepared to copy at this time. And in my mind, the logic was to do the equipment component first in the structure which we currently have, allowing teams to get in there, but with better equipment, newer equipment, equipment that facilitates all students, not just a few of the teams that it seems to be tailored to at this time. Continue the research and make a really thoughtful suggestion about staffing down the road.
I had, as I was thinking about this, a couple questions as we've heard these comments. It seems to me there's a possibility that there is a difference between one of our coaches bringing the lacrosse team or the field hockey team or a soccer team in, or one of our phys ed teachers bringing a class in, that's different than staffing someone and having students come in on their own. Are there liability issues that are different about that, is one question. And then, is there also a capacity issue in at least one of two ways? Do the teams get first dibs, right? So if there are 3 teams in there, are we potentially turning, if we were to adopt a model, turning students away or turning them away for capacity issues? I agree, as I've been thinking about this, this is, it feels like we're being asked to kind of create a gym space, create a gym space not necessarily connected to any of our sports or any of our classes. And I don't think there is, I have not yet found a model either. I probably have not done nearly as much searching as you all have.
Well, Mr. Jarvis
For a
is doing
school
most
to
of it.
do that, it's just, it's a different thing than schools usually offer.
Yes to all of the above, right? And all of those, and even in a lot of the really enthusiastic comments that we've heard, I'm hearing commenters who are envisioning different things as they come to the podium.
Interesting.
So currently, the PE classes do access that space during the school day, and some of our special needs programs access that space during the school day.
Thank you.
Varsity teams access that space after school hours with their coaches. And so, yes to all of the above. To create a drop-in space, right, we wouldn't be able to support 300 students who all wanted to come. So there'd have to be some kind of system for signing in. I do believe that, yes, there would probably be interest in prioritizing varsity sports over, we'd have to figure that out. So if we
Yeah.
were to create a GPS-owned wellness fitness center as a benefit for all students, we've got some things that we need to work out. And I'm not prepared to put a dollar amount or an FTE number in this budget at this time tonight, because we haven't had an opportunity to think those through. I think investing in the physical space is a smart investment that we can do now that benefits the program the way it is accessed currently, and may put us in a better position to do some of these really exciting ideas once we understand them better and once we're able to make a proposal around those ideas. Mr. Jarvis, who is the athletic director and has responsibility for those varsity athletic programs, and Mrs. Sullivan, who is the department chair for PE at Guilford High School, are planning on some districts to visit. We know that we want to go see what North Branford is doing. It's a very close neighbor who's doing some really interesting things. As we always do, we want to get out to Fairfield County, and we want to see what when you've got an unlimited budget, what do you choose to do in those areas? And so we're looking into all of that, but I'm not prepared to put an FTE number or a dollar amount to it tonight. And to be very honest, haven't really pushed to do that when this is a budget with only 1.6 increased teaching positions within the right. So I think it's a really exciting idea. I'm glad we can move forward with phase one. But we need time to look at phase two, I believe, and do it really well.
And Dr. Freeman, with that, I know we keep saying varsity sports. My hope would be, I would hope there'd be some equitable looking at scheduling, and it wouldn't just be that like certain sports get, I'm sure you guys will do that,
Yeah,
but I
I
just think of an investment at this scale.
And I apologize, I'm using that for shorthand for high school sports. Yes, but yes, absolutely.
And this is no negativity to a lacrosse or football team, but like that the other sports get equal access. If we're making this investment, I would hope we would be really careful to make sure that it's equally accessible to those teams, yeah.
It's exactly the importance of slowing down, right?
Yeah.
If we just rushed and put a body in there, I want to make
Right.
sure that if we do this, we do it really thoughtfully and well. And again, see what some of those other communities who may have done something like this, how did you really use it to target the students who aren't three-season athletes, or the JV, or the freshmen, or the intramural programs? How, right? And again, when it is such a small resource, we want to be really thoughtful with how we're doing it. And because of the opportunity to bond this portion, keep it out of the operational budget in a really difficult year, but still take a significant step forward on the interest we're hearing from the community, we thought that was a pretty nuanced approach, and I'm going to continue to recommend that that's the approach we take.
Can I pivot?
Yes, go right ahead.
We've heard somewhat about the Summer Pathways program. And I think it would be helpful for those watching or playing back this video later to explain really briefly just the history of that program and the way we were actually originally able to provide for it.
Yeah.
And how much like a lot of the other federal funding we had at the time, we built these programs and were able to absorb things. But yeah, I think it would be important because I know it's on your list here and I know there's a lot of opinions about the value of it. But if we had to sadly cut it, I just want to help people understand
I really do appreciate the question, and I realized that I missed an opportunity to speak to it last week when we met with the Board of Finance, when that question about ESSER and ARPA funds did come up. So this summer, and it breaks my heart a little bit to have it on the list. But this Summer Pathways program came into place when we received the ESSER monies during the pandemic. And we were encouraged to use those monies to help students who were impacted by the pandemic. We created this Summer Pathways program as a way for students who had impacted school years, who had lost contact time during those early school years where we shut down early and then we came back part-time. So the Summer Pathways program, I remember using the term, it's touches. It gives these students who have been impacted more touches with grade level appropriate, standards aligned instruction. And we paid for it for the first 2 years with those ESSER dollars. We've been really thoughtful with staffing positions and other positions about the ESSER money to blend that into the full budget. This past year, that program was again offered, but it was covered with just regular taxpayer budget dollars. When we are in a difficult situation and making really forced choices, I just believe it's my responsibility to point out that this was a pandemic response program. It is not a mandated program, and the grant dollars that had previously paid for it are no longer available. So in some of our meetings, or we've heard at the town, and you see it in other municipalities that had bigger dollars, when the grant money dries up, you have to stop doing the things that the grant dollars paid for, right? Do we continue to have a need for that additional contact time over the summer? And it does impact a relatively small number of students when you're talking about the whole population and when you're looking at the cost versus, so I believe we were at a high water mark of about 100 students. Do you know how many we serviced last summer?
We were closer to 150.
Okay, so high water mark of 150, and how many last year do you think? Was last year?
I think last year was the higher.
Okay, so it services about 150 students out of a population of 3,000. It was funded by grants. We're now paying for it locally. And again, it's not a mandated program. It's not a requirement. It was something that we did as a pandemic intervention.
And it was still free, correct, to families last summer?
Yes.
We can talk about this another time, but maybe there's a different model.
Yeah, I was just
A
going to
pay model or like a reduced, we don't have to do that tonight. But if it doesn't have to be the thing on the chopping block, but
Right.
maybe there's a way
It's-
to create some savings here, much like we did with kindergarten or,
Can there be a tuition aspect?
yeah.
It
yeah.
could be, and we've got a couple real concerns about that. One is we're concerned about the additional workload that creating a revenue program brings in for the staff who are doing it over the summer months. And we worry about what our price point would need to be to make it a break even, and are we going to come close to 150 students at the price point if we try to make it something. And we had a similar conversation around preschool recently where we looked at the tuition we charge to typical peers who join us in the preschool that we offer. Doesn't come close to covering the full expense of offering that program. So we haven't even toyed with what the price point would need to be.
No, I'm not saying maybe
Yeah.
a full pay, but like, anyway, we can do this
Yes.
another time, but it's just to
It's
the
why it
folks
has to be on the
watching
list,
and
yeah.
understanding, it's not that we want this to go away, it's just that we have a history with this of it being
Yes.
a wonderful addition during a time when kids really desperately needed it, and it's been so popular and successful that, of course, we'd love to keep it going, but maybe there's another way to look at it if we can hold on to it.
When we were drawing additional grant funds, and there's going to be a lot of conversation and talk about other existing grants that we're drawing and whether or not those are going to remain available to us moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Along those lines, saw some really upsetting news today as we were coming into these meetings about the president freezing monies associated with DEI going into schools, affecting things like free and reduced lunch, affecting things like Head Start. How much, and I know I'm throwing this at you without preparation, because I literally just saw it. How much money do we get from the federal government, and do we need to also consider adjusting our budget, assuming we're not going to get those federal dollars?
So we're going to need a lot of clarification, but my understanding is it may not just be grants related to DEI or to any, it may be all grants that are coming out, at least being paused or interrupted, if not eliminated. Our total take from federal dollars? Ballpark it, please.
Sorry, Linda.
It's like Jen, for example.
So I can't
So
do it.
we just had this conversation before the meeting and said, we need to start getting these answers. So asking for the.
Exactly.
I will
Yep.
share,
So-
like, sorry, go ahead.
I can't, off the top of my head, do like what we would lose for the free and reduced lunch. I
That's
don't
based
know.
on enrollments.
Yeah, I can't do those numbers off the top of my head.
But there was a news report tonight before I came here that exempted the programs that have been just mentioned.
Well, we in Connecticut passed legislation that we covered reduced families and made them free. So
We're not impacted.
If we just talked about the title grants, yeah,
Past couple
and
years, right, so it's a little.
it's very confusing
So
right
early-
now.
so
but
early to determine
in
what's
title
going on.
grants, what do we receive in title grants?
It's probably somewhere with the IDA grants. It's probably closer to 7, 8, 900,000, maybe a little bit more, depending on what other grants they throw in there.
So those would be the title grants, essentially. The free and reduced lunch is always going to waiver based on enrollment. It's based on the number of students that we're providing the support for. But you could say that it's a ballpark of about $1 million that now there's a lot of confusion around that dollar figure. The reports are all over the place, and so all of the organizations are working to try to get clarification. CABE is digging into it, CAPS is digging into it, CASBO is digging into it. We're going to try to start figuring out what all of that means.
And I guarantee there's litigation that comes out of it, and
There
there's
will be.
probably more of a pause, but it's something that we need to consider as a district, that on top of all the stuff we've been talking about now, there's another $1 million that we may have to adjust for, potentially. I'm not saying we are,
And
but-
then, like, I'll just interject, like, I think the state is also looking at
Yes.
this too.
They're well aware.
So there will hopefully be some financial, God help us, stopgaps, that if this happens, that will trickle to districts. We have no idea what that's.
There was a
gonna look
statement that came out from the governor that I have not read fully or slowly yet. There were statements from some of the bigger educational law firms in the state that have come out. And I believe the last news that I saw was that some judge has frozen the freeze on the funds. And
Yeah.
so right now,
Yeah.
so again, a lot of moving parts, but we need to keep an eye on it. We need to take a look at it. I do not have concerns to the level that it should affect the decision we make here
No,
tonight
that's
or
what I was
tomorrow
saying.
night or
We
Monday
should,
night
yeah,
at this
yeah.
time.
Yep.
There's two line items I was hoping we could touch upon. And before we do that, I just want to clarify for the public that Summer Pathways is different from ESL.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Great.
Right, so over the summer.
ESY,
We
sorry.
offer lots of programs over the summer. We offer extended school year, ESY, for students with special needs whose IEPs require those additional hours. We do a lot of teacher learning and training over the summer. And for the last few years, we've been offering the Pathways. And then every September, we do a slideshow and celebrate all of those experiences with you.
No, I just
That's why it breaks my heart a little bit
I
to be
just want
having
to
the
make sure
conversation.
that was
Yep.
noted. Two line items that I just want to understand the increases. The first one is textbooks. So we are, sorry, I have to find it here now. Textbooks, we're looking at an increase from fiscal year 24-25 at $35,000 to 25-26 of $112,000. Could we just justify what of those are like mandated books that have to be replaced because of, state mandates? Or are we looking at just books that, am I looking at the right number?
Two of you.
Yeah.
What page are we on? Sorry.
I'm looking at the district summary,
Thank you.
page 27,
I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
textbooks and instructional materials.
There are foundational skills materials that are part of the literacy program that we've actually had that long enough now. Those foundational skills materials need to be replaced. That is part of the state mandate that we use one of the programs from the list. That is the program that we have, and those materials need to be replaced. There is also expeditionary learning, EL literacy, 5th and 6th grade, and that would complete the complement of materials from kindergarten through 8th grade that we have. So that's just catching the 5th and 6th grade up to the rest of the district. That's the majority of the texts there. Do you have, those are the only ones that I remember being, those are the.
I wasn't looking building by building, I was just looking at the district.
Adams is a huge jump.
That was okay.
So the increase of Adams?
Yeah, Adams is,
I don't want to put off buying books, but I just, I want to look at,
Just
we're
understand.
It's an
looking at
important answer.
we're looking at the total budget here
Yep.
and trying to understand where the big, jumps are. Yeah.
Adams was the addition of the ELL materials, part of it. So they have some books for some smaller things.
Yes.
Fall at grade 7 and 8 EL.
Let us get back to you on that
We
one.
have,
Okay.
Yeah, Adams was the biggest one that stood out.
So we're still planning on meeting possibly tomorrow and then definitely on
Definitely
Monday. So
Monday,
let us
yeah.
get back
I
to
don't
you.
want to put textbooks on the chopping block, I just.
No,
wanna,
we understand, but let us
Understand.
give you a thorough answer. We'll get back to you.
The other one was building maintenance, right? We keep on talking about site improvements
Yep.
and, line items that creep up on us. We're looking at an increase of 51% on a large line item that has, we've seen it over the years fluctuate from somewhere around $500,000. We, 2023-24 was nearly $1 million. Last year's budget was nearly $500,000, and now we're looking at $750,000. Is there some kind of formulation in which we're getting to that number? When we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars to play around with our budget, is this additional nearly $300,000 earmarked for, projects that we were already planning for?
I believe it's built on actual expenses.
it's not projects, it's more of, let me find the right page.
Before I left, I missed them.
So building maintenance is all of, like, the repairs to the boilers, heating and air conditioning, carpentry and plumbing and electrical supplies, doors and window repairs, it's flooring repairs, it's all kinds of maintenance items, including, so there was, believe it or not, this building is old enough that we are now,
What do we replace?
Yes.
we are replacing heating parts, and so that was an increase of $30,000 to cover for heating and HVAC parts for this building. There were some increases for cellular phones. We have more cell phones out to administrators and to staff. That was an increase to this budget line. So there's a number of things, but it's not big projects, like, it's just maintenance
It's all the
stuff.
little daily upkeep and trying to right-size the number.
And admittedly, that's the one line that we always end up, you come in with a high number, we always end up cutting it, and we always.
And then we're short every year. Every year we
So-
tell you we're transferring dollars into that line to close in the black. That's
So-
exactly right.
Do you-
So
do you
this is an effort to right-size it.
Like, do we recall, for instance, and I for the life of me, we cut that budget in half from 23-24 to 24-25. We went from nearly $1 million to $500,000. And do we recall what the
So what
reasoning
you're
behind
looking
it?
at in your budget book is actual spends, except for the last year budget. So what you have to remember that some of those are actual expenses. So
Not
all the prior years,
not budgeted expenses.
Thank you.
and then not the budget. So what the budgets actually were for those lines doesn't show on those summary pages. One of the other notes that I have on that line, we went through this, and there's about $100,000 included in this line of just unfunded mandated things that we have to do from the state. Requirements that we have to meet that cost us about $100,000 in this line, so
That's not a small amount.
No. Okay.
And we have the HVAC tech included in that too, it sounded
Yeah.
like, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's some things that even an in-house HVAC tech isn't gonna be able to do.
Yeah, right.
HVAC tech doesn't do this building, because
What-
of the system.
One of the reasons for the cut was that we moved dollars out of that
Right.
line and into the salary. That's exactly right. So part of that reduction was moving
We didn't add funds back to this
Right.
line.
when we didn't hire, when we haven't
Because-
filled the
yeah, 'cause we
position.
were still hoping to find somebody, which hopefully he'll be in next week or so.
But that's
Couple
part of
weeks.
the.
That's great. Yep.
Thank you.
I had, so I'm noticing on the list, homebound tutors, and I know as I was going through the budget book, I went back, I also then went back a couple of years and tried to see what budget lines kind of we were underspending a couple of years in a row and landed on tutors. I had on a list like to the 15 to 20,000, and so I noticed a proposal if we needed to of a 20,000 there, which I'm guessing is aligned with the fact that we have not.
Basically,
That's
we
exactly
haven't,
right.
we haven't been
That
spending
exact-
it.
okay.
So,
That is, right, that's assuming a bit of a liability. Those monies are there so that they're available
Understood.
when needed.
Right.
We've had a few good years where we haven't drawn on those dollars. So yes, the suggestion is there based on the actual spend, but
Right.
I always get nervous when we make those kinds of decisions.
Understood.
If that service is needed, we will provide it, and then we would transfer the dollars from some other line elsewhere.
Well, and I think when any of us are asking these questions, I'll repeat what I said at the very beginning before the public forum. You've brought us a budget where you have looked at each line and determined what you think you need, and understanding that sometimes it's a little lower or above what we need. But so along those lines, I'm gonna ask a question that's not on your list. And happy to hear whatever the answer is. So substitute teachers, we increased last year somewhat significantly and necessarily, both because of the need and because it has been so hard to hire substitute teachers that we did increase pay somewhat to remain competitive enough to get the staff we needed in the building when we needed them. There's in this proposed budget, an increase of another 25,000. And was looking at where we are to date in the current year and note, and this could change, I understand, but a trajectory of that at this point, we might be heading to about a $400,000 spend if it stays consistent, instead of the 450 we have budgeted. It's not on your list, so I'm assuming the thought was this is not necessarily a line you feel comfortable with altering.
No, and that projected spending this year includes days where we were not able to fill all of the sub-openings that we had.
Okay.
And so while we may not expend that full figure this year, it's not for good reason, and it's
Okay.
not, and so.
So if the people were there, we would be spending
Yes,
more on
if
that
we
line?
were able to, yes.
Thank you for that explanation. I mean, I figured there was a reason.
Covering
At times, we have administrators covering classes. At times, we're asking teachers to cover classes outside their regular workday. Yes, if we could hire the subs, we would be spending. I also have even greater concerns with the new paid sick leave legislation and the way it impacts schools. It is a well-intended thing to do, but it was not crafted or tailored for public schools. And so I worry that that is going to exacerbate some of our difficulty in covering those classes as well, and possibly run the costs up. We may be needing to find substitutes to come in to try to cover partial days because of the way that the sick time can be used. I do anticipate and hope for a legislative fix this year, but we're going to have to deal with it until it gets corrected.
Okay, thank you.
excuse me, can I go back to the Adams textbook line?
Absolutely.
So we went back and looked. It is, and this is why the line now says textbooks / instructional materials.
Yeah.
It is instructional materials for Adams School that they originally had put under their supply budget, but we felt that it would be better to move it over to textbooks and make textbooks instructional materials.
They're
And that's why-
consumables.
They're consumables, but they're instructional materials for Adams School for the language arts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You didn't even have to wait till tomorrow.
I see on your, one of your proposed reductions is the school monitors. Can you speak a little bit to why that's something that you're proposing? I mean, you know how I feel about it.
Yes, it's not something that I'm proposing. So this list, this is a list of items that I felt we needed to discuss.
Yeah.
And so they are there. And, right, this is a list that I hope we can look at thoughtfully at 3 different times if necessary. Tonight, I would argue that that is not a reduction that I would encourage you to make. Should there be a motion from the floor at town meeting, and should we be back here looking at a 0% budget? Some of these items are things that I would ask you to entertain if the Board of Finance makes further significant cuts. Some of their things I would only ask you to entertain if we find ourselves in a situation like that one. It's there because this year requires an additional and the last influx of money to fill a gap left by ARPA dollars. And so felt the need to put it there based on the conversation last year. We're really proud of the restructuring that we did this year and how we were able to bring the cost down. And please don't think that I'm suggesting all the things on this list. I just felt that these were things we needed to discuss. I'll encourage the board in some directions and I'll discourage you in others. But man, if we end up back here, if it fails at referendum and we're back here again in April, then some of these things are going to have to come up again. So it's actually 4 stages, not just 3.
Thank you.
To that point, I guess I had a question about the math interventionists. Like, we haven't had them up until this point. Is this the right year? Why is this the right year?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's the right year in the scale in which we're doing it. So again, we're not bringing 4 positions. We're not looking to do 1 per building. There have been changes at the state level in the way that we are expected to provide interventions and in the way that we're expected to track those interventions. We're shifting from a model that the state has traditionally referred to as SRBI to MTSS, which is a multi-tiered system of supports. And for us to follow the direction that the state is asking us to move, we really need to have these positions in both mathematics and in literacy, not just in literacy. Additionally, the CIA meeting that we had yesterday, we talked about how we feel we've been running into some walls with the student performance. And as we really dig into our data and look at the places that we're running into the walls, they're with students who fall into the category that the state recognizes as students with high needs. It's not with the overall population. So these positions are appropriate for the way that we're looking at and understanding our local data and a way to start working on those shortcomings. They're appropriate because of the way that the state is asking us to move. And we were able to make some other offsetting reductions, and there's a few more on here that we could make as well. There were comments about class size tonight. Right? Please understand that any of the reductions that have already been made fall well within the board guidelines for class sizes, and even the ones that are listed here for tonight for further discussion fall within those class size guidelines. We are not suggesting that we change what's acceptable in Guilford or that we go over. So I think the timing for the math interventionists, and those of you who have been on the board for a while have heard the principals asking for this for multiple years. I don't believe we can put it off for 1 more year, not with the changes made at the state level, not with the way that we're looking at our local data. And it's half of what the principals would really like. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. And you know, when I look at the initial presentation, it was about $350,000 in total investments that we were attempting to make. I don't think we can put it off for 1 more year, even though this year is a tough year.
Thank you.
What about, I think in this day and age, we all have to do more with less. What about the idea that was floated by we heard from some district people, about maybe for the time being, put that on the coaches. So still have your coaching model, they're still coaches, but for the time being, the ones at the elementary schools, for the math coaches at the elementary schools, they split their time between being interventionists and coaches, again, at least for now, while we have to do more with less. Because that's a big chunk of our salaries. I'd like to see that definitely well utilized.
Yeah, so I very much understand and appreciate the question, and I'm really going to push back against it wholeheartedly. So we've really worked to structure the instructional coaches in a way that we get the multiplier effect, that they are full-time adult professional developers. Their job is to help make the classroom teacher more effective in the setting in which the classroom teacher, and I know lots of other districts where they do that for 3 periods a day and 2 periods a day, and once you open that door, you really begin losing the validity of the model. You start to lose that role identity that they assume, and you really begin to lose that multiplier effect. And in this year specifically, the coaches have a more direct, although not evaluative, role in that teacher growth and development plan, so that the coaches aren't just supporting the teachers with their instructional practice, but they're specifically supporting the teachers in their professional learning and meeting the goals that they set for themselves associated with that growth plan. So to pull it out now would begin to make it difficult for administrators and teachers to support the model that we've just put into place. And the last addition is that, remember, last year we took 1 or 2 district specialist positions and moved them into school-level direct contact coaching positions. So we didn't ask for new coaching positions last year. We're not asking for new coaching positions this year. And I want to think back, I think it was Michelle Hann, principal at Jones at the time, who, as the principals kept asking, really sort of passionately made the argument, we want interventionists, but not if it means it's going to take away our coaches. It's not an either or, it's a both and approach. And so I know that she's gone, I know that she's not here, but I believe you'd hear other principals as well. We want and need the interventionists, but we shouldn't lose in the one area to build the other. They really are complementary. And so I get it. And again, if things get worse, we may need to revisit that. But I really want to push back this early in a process of making reductions. It's too soon, in my mind, to be having that conversation.
And I would like to suggest that the coaches are already doing more with less. We've essentially, at least a third of the work that they're doing this year is additional to the work that they've been doing before. It may be as much as half. Every single one of the coaches is working flat out. I pulled up some of their schedules before this meeting. There's not even time for them to meet with me. The only time that I can meet with them is either, before school or after school, outside of their work days, outside of their wrap time. I found 3 coaches who I need to speak to because they're not even taking lunches. So the idea that we need to do more with less, I agree completely, and they are.
I really appreciate the question.
Paraprofessionals, are we fully staffed with paras right now? We have nearly 99, I mean, it's calling for 99 and a half. It's a slight reduction. Are we fully staffed with paras right now?
No, and we've had some fluctuations recently with some people leaving us, so when we get close to being fully staffed, we have some changes that occur. So
Given that we maybe
fluid.
have floated in and out of being fully staffed, is that an area where we could consider, reducing the budget?
Yeah, and I believe we've got a number on here that and again, part of it is, it's a sign of the times that when you ask that question, in years past, I would have been able to answer that, and this year I had to pause and look to my left because the reality is changing on a weekly or monthly basis. And so it's much more fluid than it has been in the past. They're there. Right now, I'd rather have the positions in the budget and fill them if we can, but if push comes to shove, we've suggested that we could reduce up to 5 positions. And again, that is a liability. If we end up in a situation where we know students need that support, we will put it in place and we'll transfer funds to cover it later. But we've suggested up to 5 that we think we could reduce if we need to continue to bring this budget down.
One of my last questions, I've been looking for it and I can't find it. I believe last year when we talked about Summer to Pathways program, I believe last year it was at 90,000, but here it's a 57,000. Can you explain the discrepancy? I'm pretty sure it was 90,000 last year.
It was, yeah, I remember that number.
So this was based on the actual number of teachers that worked over the summer?
Okay.
Okay.
So it's an
We
adjustment.
brought in fewer teachers, yes.
Yeah, so it was,
Oh, and additionally, we had planned this summer to actually cut the grade bands down because we weren't
That's right.
seeing
The higher
sixth,
levels.
the
Yeah.
6th through 8th graders.
That's right,
just
you
weren't
talked about
coming.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we were going to
Okay.
condense that, thus the smaller number.
Okay.
Awesome.
Other questions right now, considerations? I'm noting it's 9:10.
I've got one, Dr. Balistraci. I do feel that it's important to draw your attention to a couple of the positions, the salaries that we have listed at the top.
Okay.
I do want to note that the position at Lakes, if you do look at the enrollment as we've provided it to you, there is currently a second grade at Lakes where you're, a first grade at Lakes, where you're seeing 64 students who are in 4 sections. We could create a second grade at Lakes of 3 sections where the students are going, right? And so, again, that falls within the board guidelines. I understand and appreciate everything that was shared about class size, but we had some really difficult conversations the last couple of years about making tough decisions and remaining within those class bands as projected. And I know that I said that, you know, in the 2nd and 3rd grade, 20 is a completely reasonable class size.
Sure.
And so
Yep.
that is there. I also want to note that the .4 ELA position at GHS, it's
Okay.
a small reduction, but that's a .4 that we currently have in the budget that we've been unable to fill this year, and the high school has been able to make that work. So we can make that reduction,
Okay.
and it is not going to increase class sizes, it's not going to change what's happening at the high school now. So both of those, and again, while they do come very close to this, right, they come right into the classroom, but they do not impact students at all.
Yeah.
Or beyond the guidelines that this board suggests and publishes around class size. It keeps you right in those areas.
Okay.
So again, I just wanted to note both of those. I know we're not making any decisions tonight.
No, but it's helpful because, you know, we will all be leaving here, I speak for myself, but I'm quite sure we will all be leaving here continuing to think about this and look about this and,
Yep.
and make various considerations. Are there other questions,
Will we by tomorrow night have any more sense of whether the OPED and the retirement funds will be available to us?
We'll try to have conversations with town tomorrow and make sure.
And I will be trying to reach out to the
'Cause that makes a big
chairs of those
difference.
2 boards. For sure.
Getting down to 5.18 is,
If one of the 3 boards says that they counted votes and they're not in support of releasing the
That
funds, that's a
changes things
significant
drastically.
change. And so, yes,
That's
I think
exactly
we
right.
need to try to have at least that informal agreement, if it's not going to be a formal decision, before we ask you guys to count on those dollars.
Sorry, I'm just doing a
well, it
subtraction.
works either way. We either go in with a budget anticipating that those funds would be there, and if we find out after that, we can still revise the budget.
Yes.
As opposed to going in and not counting it and having made cuts that look like, that are public, and have to bring them back.
Exactly
So
right.
I would argue strategically, we should, unless we have real evidence tomorrow night that this is not a high probability, because we really don't want to touch
No.
teachers and students.
I mean, I couldn't see the folks who participated by Zoom really clearly, but based on our conversation tonight, it feels high probability to me already, but we will try to confirm that and get closer to that tomorrow. And the same with OPEB. It feels to me like the town budget went more quickly on the medical savings and we're playing catch-up, and I think tonight we just went more quickly on OPEB.
Yeah,
And-
we might want to revisit
And we
that.
need to make sure
Yeah.
that, and my understanding was that the town understood we were having that conversation and are likely to follow us on the OPEB decision. And I think after the earlier conversation, finding out that the town was already sort of counting on that reduction, that we're catching up to them on the other side.
when I first asked about the OPEB reduction, or the possibility of options, both Mary Jane and Matt Hoey were very quick to say, yes, and whatever we do, we have to be on the same page. So
Of course,
it was my feeling that they were in favor of it. What we're waiting on right now is the actuary, for some reason, only revised the contribution schedule for the Board of Ed and not the town. So I have it and Mary Jane doesn't. I looked at ours. I wasn't thrilled with it. It didn't smooth it out the way I expected. So she's redoing it. So we're waiting on that. So that could be a little bit of a delay on the OPEB. I'm hoping to have it tomorrow or possibly Thursday.
Okay.
But that was.
I get a sense for tomorrow, and I don't think that you're right. We may need to wait until that Monday meeting anyway.
I don't think we're going to learn much tomorrow.
No.
Oh, well, that was going to be my next question, right? So we have, because we need to post meetings at least 24 hours ahead of time, created a meeting for tomorrow night that would give us the flexibility if we needed it. We then would never be voting tomorrow night anyway, because it is part of our agenda and advertises such that we are voting on the budget next Monday. So the question is, do we need the meeting tomorrow night? Or do we have sufficient information to take this back and then have a discussion on Monday, particularly if there's some pieces of information that we may not have ready and available.
And since we answered that textbook question, we can continue to answer questions in the Q&A document.
Absolutely, send them to me.
Yep.
I'll send them right on to Linda. Does anyone have a concern about not meeting tomorrow night?
I don't think we need it. I mean, I don't think we've really hashed out a lot tonight. So in my opinion,
Okay.
And we were still, the information we're waiting for may not
Yeah.
come by tomorrow, so.
It's more likely we'll have better answers by Monday than
Yeah,
tomorrow.
we covered a lot of ground, and I think, ultimately, Monday's discussion will probably get us to where we need to get to.
Okay. I'm gonna.
I'm kind of bummed out, but.
Well, you are welcome to come here tomorrow. I do want to make clear, obviously, I will announce it here. I imagine then that Lori Hahn will send out, I want to make sure we cover our bases, since we did post this.
To notice the cancellation to the school community.
That's right. Could
You guys
we?
help me remember?
Does that?
Do we need to vote to cancel it?
Do we need to vote to cancel it? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No, it's just a posted meeting.
Yeah, so we'll send out a notification that the board didn't see any reason to.
If you're
Yeah.
more comfortable, there's no harm in a vote.
Doesn't hurt if you guys want to take a vote.
Motion to cancel tomorrow night's vote.
Motion to cancel, second, all in favor?
Happiest
Aye.
vote I've ever seen.
Okay.
Wait till the motion to adjourn.
Okay, and I do.
That's always the happiest motion of the night.
But I also do want to thank members of the administration, Terry Fiandel and others who put in some time to set up. I'm quite sure Kevin was perhaps prepared to be here tomorrow night as well. People may have cleared calendars. My apologies for the back and forth, but if we needed it, we could not have determined that tonight. We needed to plan ahead.
If we were still hearing public comment now, there was no way
There
to
was
know
not-
how
that-
long that was
exactly
going to.
right.
It was the right
That's all
thing
right.
to do.
Okay. All right. This has been a great use of the time. Thank you to everyone. Linda, thank you so much. You are always prepared with
Her mega binder.
lots of information and really finds it quite quickly. It's truly amazing. So, for the viewing public, we will not, the Board of Ed will not be meeting for a special meeting tomorrow night, Wednesday at 6 p.m. It was just recently posted in preparation for a possible need for further discussion. The Board of Education members do not feel like we will need that. We will next meet next Monday, February 3rd at 7:30. It will be a special meeting for us to finish deliberating on budget decisions and vote on a final budget to put forth to the Board of Finance. That being said, any last comments, questions? All right, then I am going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, great, thank you very much.